In 2015, I fell about 25 feet out of a redwood tree and ended up in a 10-day coma. The first thing I do remember is I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, and there was a man claiming to be my boyfriend by my bedside. And he was like, "Hey, I've been telling the doctors and everyone that you're my girlfriend. Is that okay?" I was like, yeah, I guess so. Is that what has been happening between us? And he was like, well, we were never like together, but we are. So, I'm just telling everyone you're my girlfriend now. And like, I felt weird about it. It felt strange. It sounds like 51st Dates, but instead of a romantic comedy with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, it turned into more of a horror film.
Hi, I'm Laura Risholi, and this is The Sex That Changed My Life, the show that looks at how intimacy and relationships can shape our lives and uncover who we really are.
It was absolutely magical.
Oh, yes.
I've wanted this for so long.
Right there. Oh.
Don't stop.
Hi, welcome back to The Sex That Changed My Life. Today's guest is Brooke. One night at a college gathering, she fell out of a super high tree, and then she woke from a coma to a man next to her hospital bed claiming he was her boyfriend. Brooke couldn't remember him, and she honestly didn't have a great feeling about him, but she couldn't trust her own instincts. I mean, she'd just woken up from a coma. And plus, she kind of felt scared, alone, vulnerable, and she really wanted care and company. So what harm could he do, she thought. But oh, how she was wrong. As Brooke began her recovery process and her mystery boyfriend wedged his way further and further into her life, things started to get super weird. This episode is kind of all about the importance of trusting your own instincts, even when the odds are super against you. Hold on tight. This story is a wild one. Here's Brooke. Okay, Brooke, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Hi. Let's start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself.
So I was born on Coronado Island. It's not technically an island, but military family, so moved around quite a bit growing up. San Diego has been the place I've probably stayed in the longest, but very nomadic life. And then for work, right now, I am a content strategist for financial technology companies, and then I do writing on the side, pitching pieces to various outlets.
Yes, me too. It's the industry of sending emails and not getting replies.
Oh, yeah.
So this story really starts when you're in college. So maybe can you set the scene a little bit for us? Where you went to college, what your vibe was like at college, how old you were?
I was 23 years old, and I was a bit of a mess, as a lot of 23-year-olds are. But I was studying literature, and I wanted to be a writer of some sort. At that time, I was predominantly writing fiction and taking a bunch of horror writing and horror movie classes. So I would say that's my main interest. I love horror films.
That's kind of ironic given what happened to you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get straight into that.
Yeah, definitely. So 2015, I fell about 25 feet out of a redwood tree and ended up in a 10-day coma. And to backtrack, I would climb the redwood trees a lot with it was a pretty common pastime for UC Santa Cruz students. Everyone would climb the redwood trees. We were pretty safe about it. We didn't use any safety gear, which would come to bite me in the butt. But we would sometimes have one or two beers and then do it. But we were all pretty skilled climbers. This night was no different. I actually have no memory of the day of or weeks after and before. The first thing I do remember is I woke up. I was in a hospital bed. I had double vision, but the second image of my double vision was rotated. So it was like vertically stacked, and the top image was rotated. And
Oh my God.
yeah,
How disconcerting.
yeah, and that lasted quite a while because I didn't get an eye surgery until like 9 months later. But yeah, so I was in a hospital bed. And I knew something was wrong, mostly because of the vision, and just I had no idea how I ended up there. And like the next thing I know, my mom came in the room, and there was this guy with her, and I knew that I knew him somehow, like he felt familiar, but I didn't know exactly how. And then a medical health technician came in, which I would later find out she was a physical therapist, and she was taking me away for a physical therapy session. And I couldn't walk, so I had to transfer to a wheelchair to do it. And I was like, okay, this is something's going on. That's what I was like. Before I thought something was amiss, and now I know something is really wrong. I can't walk. And then she introduced herself to me again, and I was like, oh, that's my grandpa's girlfriend's name. And she was like, yeah, I know, you've told me this like every time that I've met you to do sessions for the past few weeks. And I was like, for the past few weeks, how long have I been here? And yeah, at that period of time, I had been there for about a month and a half, but I had no recollection. I woke up from the coma 10 days after I fell, which was at the end of July. So many great stories about me waking up from a coma, honestly. They kept asking me where I went to high school, and I kept saying San Dimas High, and my mom was like, oh my God, she's never even been to San Dimas, I don't think. I don't know why she's saying that. And she called up my dad, and my dad was the one who was like, that's the high school from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And she was like, why is she saying that?
It's so funny the things we remember.
Yeah, I didn't know where I was, so I kept. Oh, this is risque. But my aunt mentioned that she went to visit me in the hospital, and when she walked in, I just pulled back They had me like strapped down to the bed because I was kicking my legs, and she said that I just threw back the covers and just pointed at my vagina and just like stared at her and pointed at it. And she was like, I don't know what you want me to know about that, Brooke. And I just like pulled the covers back on and just like sat back like, there it is. That's what I wanted to do. I'm like, okay. But yeah, I didn't remember any of that. So then little by little, memories started to stick. So I kept asking people like what was happening. But I feel like by that time, I had been asking them for weeks. So I don't, they don't know when things actually start sticking in my long-term memory. So they were probably just like, we're just going to have to explain this to her again. And so they were only giving me like very short answers. I think because they figured like tomorrow will be the same. And then so the younger guy, my age, but I don't know who he is, he had been just like sticking around and like popping in here and there. And finally when it was just me and him, he came in and he was like, hey, I've been telling the doctors and everyone that you're my girlfriend. Is that okay? I was like, yeah, I guess so. Is that what has been happening between us? He said, you didn't know how you knew me, but if you'll remember, we met each other at Santa Cruz. We've been kind of involved for a couple years. And the last thing that happened, I was renting a room in a house. He was like, I moved some of this stuff into that room. And I was like, okay. He was like, so, I'm just telling everyone you're my girlfriend now. I was like, all right. And like, I felt weird about it. It felt strange. Like even the way he was like telling me about the clipped version of our interactions, I was like, okay, so there's something more to this. But all right, at that point, I did remember like certain interactions with him from the past, and it did corroborate what he was saying, that we had been like kind of involved, and at that time too, my mom and I, we didn't talk about any of that kind of stuff. So she had no idea who I was. Like she knew.
There was no one there to like back it up for you.
Yeah. And then my friend, actually my best friend at the time, she did know more of the context, and she knew more of the story, but she was like, maybe something happened between, so she didn't say anything, didn't point out anything because she was like, hey, I hadn't talked to Brooke in like a couple of weeks before this, maybe things
Right.
changed. Yeah.
So by the time you sort of came to, so to speak, there was this guy who you kind of knew. You're like, yeah, you're familiar. And he essentially told your story back to you, but ended on like but we're more serious now. Like we're girlfriend, boyfriend. Is that okay that I'm telling people that? And you were like, I mean, to be fair, you had just woken up from a fucking coma. So it's like,
I was a little disoriented. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's like, if he wanted to, sort of assert something that maybe wasn't true, that would definitely be the moment to do it. Like, very manipulative. And there was no one there, as you're saying, like your mum and your best friend. She didn't know whether or not you guys were dating now.
Yeah, exactly. And my mom had mentioned, like I was talking to her about, the stuff I didn't remember from the hospital. And she was like, yeah, every time that he walked in for about the first month, you would just like sweep your arm and go, I guess I have a boyfriend now. We all laughed because we were like, oh, typical Brooke, cracking jokes like that.
Yeah. I want to like go into how that relationship then sort of progressed because like I know that you got to a point where you started to sort of remembering more about your time with him at college before. You did have a like sexual relationship. But I'm interested first to understand a bit more about how you felt about him being there because you mentioned that you felt a bit uncomfortable about it, but you obviously couldn't put your finger on it at the time because you were like just coming to.
Yes, definitely. Because my memory was so bad initially, it kind of plays back into what I was saying before that people were re-explaining things to me and just getting kind of sick of it. And I think that he was using that to his advantage because when I started remembering things, he would come in the morning for a little bit and then tell me he would be back later in the afternoon and then just not come back. And like the first time it happened, I was like, okay, something came up, I guess. And then the next day, the exact same thing happened. And I was like, does he just show up in the morning and tell me he's going to come back later and then just not come back and just rely on the fact that I'm not going to remember? He just was not really like all that there. He was just like in and out. And my mom did not like him and was just telling me how they were like feuding. And then he was telling me that from his point of view, he was like, your mom is just not being accommodating at all. And then she was like, she just hated him too. And was just like, he is so naggy. He's telling the doctors how to do their job. Later, I was like, yeah, my mom mentioned that you were telling the doctors how to do their job. And he was like, well, my mom was a trauma nurse. And then my stepdad was a physiatrist working with, people with traumatic brain injuries. That basically makes me a doctor. And I was like, what? I don't think that's how that works. I don't think it's passed down through the DNA.
I don't think that the medical board would agree with him. But like, what were you feeling in that moment?
So it's difficult to explain because my memory, if you've ever seen the movie 50 First Dates, and there's 10-second Tom, that like every 10 seconds his memory starts over, it was very similar to that, just with like a slightly longer time span. But sometimes I even when I was saying something before I reached the end of the sentence, I would forget what I was trying to say. Like it was pretty bad and pretty debilitating. So I was having difficulties even expressing myself and understanding what was happening in my direct presence, like even comprehending the little feud going on between my mom and this guy, and just like everything outside of that was it was conceptually just so foreign. I couldn't even wrap around my mind that anything existed out of a 10-foot space from me.
From what you can remember, can you describe his behavior during this time towards you? Like, I want to get a bit of an image of like how he's behaving.
He was the worst part and the most traumatic part of this. Like, I feel like if I had just fallen out of a tree and had just woken up from a coma, like I would have handled that fine. But he was unhappy with everything I was doing from the moment that, my memory started to stick in the hospital, he was just, whatever I was doing, it wasn't enough, or I wasn't focusing on the right things. When I was trying to do logic puzzles to try to make my brain work again and like reading and stuff, he was like, maybe you should focus on shaving and like getting rid of body hair. Because I am
Oh my God.
yeah, naturally I'm a very hairy chick.
Me too. I'm Italian, so.
Yeah, I don't have that excuse. Well, I'm Scottish. I mean, that's hairy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I couldn't shave. Like, I just woke up from a coma, so obviously they weren't like shaving with me.
Instead of helping you, like encouraging you, like what a good normal boyfriend would do, like bare minimum, he's essentially like making it really hard for you to recover because he's picking on the way you're doing things. And also, to be honest, things that just don't fucking matter. Who gives a fuck if you're hairy ever, to be honest, but in hospital?
Looking back on it now, it's like he couldn't have cared about me at all, because if you care about someone, you're more interested in them getting better, not these like aesthetic choices that really don't affect the recovery at all in any way. And when I was discharged, I was going back to San Diego with my family, and he decided that he was going to come with us to San Diego. And
What, to support you?
yeah, to support me. And I was like, okay.
Did he like move in with you or what?
He was renting his own place, but he was trying to like browbeat my mom into letting him stay at their house. And she, put her foot down and was like, no. But he stayed nearby. And then whenever he got off work, he would come over to my parents' house and like pick me up and take me. He would take me to like salons and ask them to wax my face. And yeah, it was terrible. And then I'm very pale. I have a very sensitive skin, so my face would just be like swollen. And then they would hold the mirror up to be like, how do you like this? And then I still had double vision because I hadn't had an eye surgery. I'd be like closing my eye and being like, good, But
You're literally in your own horror movie, like I can't. But wait, so just before we carry on with this like shit show of a boyfriend, like pretending to be boyfriend, like just terrible misogynistic vibe, I just want to understand a little bit more about like when he was in hospital, when he was there, like, I'm your boyfriend now, was there any like affection? Did he like hold your hand, or did you kiss, or did anything intimate happen? Like, did he act like your boyfriend at all?
No. I'm laughing because like the closest thing to that was he was obsessed with the show Naked and Afraid, which I had never seen. Every time I was trying to do brain exercises or something, he would throw on Naked and Afraid on the TV and then sit next to me and be like, you don't need to do those. Watch this show. And he would just like over and over again be like, I would love to go on one of these shows. I'd have to be with somebody who would be able to be on Naked and Afraid. I was like, I am kind of naked and afraid right now. Like, does that count? But so that was like the closest to like affection, I guess, is that we would watch Naked and Afraid together, which I had kind of forgotten about.
Did that strike you as weird?
Like,
were you like, why, if this is my boyfriend, why isn't he like being like affectionate to me? Why is he being a dick?
I don't have a great history with dating and being involved with people. I always joke around and say I'm a battered woman because you've been in relationships with people that were abusive in a different sense than this, which is heavily psychological. And so that type of interaction to me at the time seemed healthy. It didn't seem bad. And also, I'm just in general, I'm not really an affectionate person. So the fact that he wasn't super affectionate didn't strike me as strange. And then those kinds of jokes, I feel like we would make with each other. Like, I could never be with a person who did, stuff like that.
Right.
But I did feel, given the context and the situation, that's a weird thing to say right now to...
Yeah, a little on the nose.
to this person who can't walk, who can't shower. I feel like I was primed. I was the perfect person for him to pull this with in a way, because I was so relaxed about everything. Uh, and
You're also just unaware. Like you were
yeah,
just like in a world of like relearning how to like human. So
that's another reason why I think no one in my family, no one in my friend, they all were kind of like, this is weird, because we didn't hear anything about it. But also, they know that I'm not very affectionate. So they were like, okay, this seems like kind of normal behavior for Brooke, but also normal in this sense that she's never been in a good relationship and she's never actually behaved well with, someone
okay.
before. Like, we don't know what that would look like.
Right. That didn't have anything to sort of like compare it to necessarily.
Exactly. And that's because I had already had that established history of having relationships like this. People weren't all that surprised or didn't press on it too much. But but I was drinking a lot. I had at that time like a couple different boyfriends, like 3, I think, and every single one of them fell into the pattern.
Yeah. So how did the relationship progress then? So once he moved back to San Diego with you, got a job and was really set on being your like quote unquote boyfriend, how did that relationship kind of expand?
Well, I spent a lot of time trying to get my mind back. I was trying to finish a book. It took me 1 month to read a novella. I was working on myself that way. And then he would come and pick me up, take me to, as I mentioned before, get my face waxed. Or his big thing too was that he wanted me to work out. He kept wanting me to work out. So he would take me to, yeah, he would take me to there's this mountain called Mount Palomar, and he'd be like, we're going to practice running up this mountain. And I was like, I just stopped using an arm crutch. I don't know about this. And, yeah, it was just, he kept doing stuff like that. He kept taking me on long hikes. The Mount Palomar one, I ended up throwing up. And then he sat down next to me while I was throwing up. And by way of like explanation, he was like, my dad was really hard on me as a kid. I just like looked at him, I'm all cross-eyed because I still have double vision, and I have just like vomits hanging out of my mouth, and I'm like, that must have been hard. It's just like,
Oh my God.
but so all of that is going on. And then meanwhile, the friend I was with when I fell out of the tree, she left on a study abroad sometime while I was in the hospital. So she was out of the country. And I had messaged her on Facebook. I wanted to know what happened. I had no memory. I didn't know, what had happened or anything. And she finally messaged me back, basically was like, hey, glad you're doing okay. Because I had mentioned that the guy had come down to San Diego. She was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know he was, so involved. Like, how's that going? And I was like, well, he seems way more interested in focusing on me learning to shave and run up mountains, my like physical condition than rehabilitating
You're like,
my
not
brain.
great. He made me run up a fucking mountain.
Yeah. Like, well,
Incredible
yeah.
work by you.
And I said, yeah, he keeps telling me not to work on mind puzzles and mind games or whatever, and to focus on like strengthening my body. And she responded back and was like, well, maybe there's something he doesn't want you to remember. And I was like, at that time, I didn't read too much into that. I just laughed. Like, maybe he doesn't want me to remember like how I was before. My mom was doing it too. As I mentioned before, I'm not the most feminine. And my mom, the whole time that I was in the hospital, kept talking about that I should be more demure. Like when I was relearning to walk, they were suggesting I should swing my hips more. You know what I mean? And at one time, one time the medical social worker came in because they decided to have an intervention because of my drinking, and she was like showing me photos of when I was in the coma, and I started laughing because I had a giant like blood dread because my hair was super long and they had to shave it off. And I started laughing because it was a ridiculous photo. And the medical social worker was like, it's okay. This is just the brain damage. She's just having an adverse reaction. Sometimes people with brain damage will think things are funny when they're not. And my mom just so angrily was like, no, this is just Brooke. And she was like, you could just try to be like nicer. And that was like a constant
so
thing.
Weird. So it's giving like she's woken up from a coma. Maybe we can reprogram her to be more
Yes.
like, that's so fucked up.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the consensus. Like everyone was like, oh, maybe we can like have her be human now, like the human we want. So, and my mom was guilty of that as well. So when this guy was doing that type of stuff, like she knew that he was taking me to get my face waxed and making me like do all this stuff, and she kind of just didn't engage with it and was like fine with that happening. So when my friend messaged me, maybe there's something he doesn't want you to remember, my first thought was, yeah, maybe he just doesn't want me to remember like how I am and who I am, which, you know, I get everyone's trying to reprogram me right now. One of the lessons, maybe the biggest lesson I took away from this is that when it comes down to it, you are you. You know, the self is hard coded, and you should like trust that self and not let people try to convince you to be something else or that something else is going on. And had I listened to that earlier on, then maybe things wouldn't have got as out of hand. And after I read that message from her, he showed up because it was like after he got off work, and I made the mistake because I thought it was funny. So I said to him, oh, I'm messaging with the friend I was with, when I fell out of a tree. She's finally gotten back to me. And she said this. She said, oh, maybe there's something he doesn't want you to remember. And I'm laughing because I think it's funny. And he did not laugh. The opposite. He freaked out. He was like, what? Why would you say that to her? Why would you say that I don't care about your mind getting better? Why would you say that? And he didn't like shake me, but he put his hands on either side of my face and were like shaking his hands like this and was like, why would you say that? Why would you say that? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, I don't know. And then he left and I just like walked inside and my mom was like, are you okay? You do not look okay. And I was like, I don't know what is happening.
We're going to take a quick ad break, but please stick around. We'll be back soon with more The Sex That Changed My Life. Oh my God. Okay, wait. I really want to know what he wanted you to forget because this is like a plot twist, right? I'm so curious. Let's get to that in a sec. But I really just want to sit for a second on the bit about like how in relationships, I think it's really common for people to try to change each other. Like it's just a part of what we do as human beings, I think. And I feel like, I've been in relationships like that. And I just want to sit on the fact for a moment that it must have been so hard to maintain your sense of self in this moment because people who have wanted you to change maybe for a while, like your mum, for example, but then also this guy, are like trying to enact this in a moment when you are at your most vulnerable. Like, how did you manage that? That sounds really, really hard.
So that had kind of been going on for a while, as you alluded to, with my family. So it was almost like I was used to that. And instead of it like hurting my feelings or feeling completely disconnected with myself, I just thought it was funny. And maybe this was, the injury too, that I always joke around and I say in a way, it's good I was as brain damaged as I was because then I didn't know how messed up everything was. Because now looking back at it, I'm just like, I'm angry with everyone. I'm angry with myself. So many things. But at the time, I was just kind of pleasantly amused. So them actually trying to change me and go through that itself didn't bother me. I was like, this is how it always has been. But then the reason why I went along with it is I was like, I have no autonomy. I still can't drive. I couldn't ride a bike. Like the first time I rode a bike was like 3 years after my accident. I couldn't go anywhere by myself. So I kind of just felt like this is just what I have to do now. This is what I do now. Wherever someone will take me, I go on the little outings and this is like my activity. And it just so happens that my activity for the day is getting the hair ripped off of my face or being forced to run up a mountain.
It's really sad to me that in a moment when you clearly needed help finding yourself again, because it sort of almost like took you back to ground zero, like you can't do basic things all of a sudden. And in that moment, it just makes me sad that people's instinct was to utilize that to their advantage rather than to help you get back to yourself. Instead, they thought, we'll take control now. Finally, we can have control over what she's doing, how she looks, whatever. Yeah, I just find that sad. Like, it's not a great comment on like human nature, you know? Or these
Yeah.
particular humans. I don't know.
The behavior, it definitely was the norm for my mom. The other reason why I wasn't so weirded out by him always worrying about my body hair and trying to remove my body hair is that my mom, she was like modeled when she was a kid. So she's very
Right.
into that world and pretty vain. And I remember when I was like 12 or 13, because I was very tomboyish. I had my dad's old members only jacket from like the 80s and I liked it. So I wore it all the time. And she thought that I wore it all the time because I was embarrassed about my arm hair. I'm like, no, I don't care about that. But she like didn't believe me. So one time she took me to a waxing studio and asked the waxer to wax my, and I didn't know it was a waxing studio. I knew what was going on. You know, I was horrified. I was like, I don't want my arms waxed. And the waxer like looked at me and looked at my mom and like horror and was like, I'm not going to do that if she doesn't want it. That's how I learned about consent.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's always been kind of a pattern for me is that everyone's always wanted me to change like my appearance and stuff. And just was always so strange to me because I know that women are always judged by their appearances and that they're supposed to meet these certain like parameters of appearance, but I just never was interested in like wearing makeup or taking care of my body hair or anything like that. Yeah, so even after, so they had to shave my head after the coma and just with everything, I have the bolts and take the bolt out. That didn't bother me. That was fine. But this guy hated that. And so that was another outing we did is he took me to get my hair cut and he was like described what he wants. And I just hear her go, I can't make hair grow any faster. And I was like, did you really take me? He just hated the short hair so much. So he bought me a beanie and I had to wear the beanie anytime I was around him.
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, so
Was there any part where you felt like you were just a bit like lonely as well? Where you were kind of like, well, he's here and he keeps showing up and there's like something about that that feels better than no one?
yeah, yes, because on one hand, my family was infantilizing me, deciding that I was too disabled to do certain things, but not disabled enough for other things. And, you know, life goes on. So all my friends and everything, they had jobs and lives to go back to. So he was like my outing. I had to choose between being at home with my parents, whom I love them, but they're recovering alcoholics. And at that time, they were still active in that. And my brother was going through his own mental health thing during that time. And he's living in the back room. It wasn't exactly an enjoyable place to spend time.
So you offered somewhat of an escape, like even though it wasn't necessarily better, it was something different.
Exactly. And he would, not all of them were good little outings, but then other times he would take me to like the beach or something. He took me to the Bates' Nut Farm, like around Halloween or Thanksgiving-ish. And that was nice. I got to just walk around. It's like taking your little brain damaged girlfriend on little outings. Like, that's cute.
I mean, it's cute sometimes. It's like
Yeah.
the nut farm's cute, but I don't know about like the getting waxed and the hair extension cut. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is that for every moment that it was like, I was like, okay, this is nice, this is pleasant. Then it like an instant later, we like after one of those occasions, we were driving by the beach and there's, you know, very attractive people jogging and stuff. And he like looks over and then looks at me and goes, you have a lot of competition. And I'm just like, I close my eye, look at him and I'm like, I'm gonna lose. You know, like
this guy makes me so angry hearing about him, but I feel like this is also total textbook manipulation, emotional manipulation. Like, they do nice things enough that it makes you question whether or not you're being fussy or you're not seeing the good intention in what it is that they're doing. It's like every time you get angry, they'll find a way to make you question yourself. And I can only imagine that at a time like that where you really do need somebody to like physically take you out and help you do basic things, like that, you know, would be a really hard sort of like tug of war in your brain, because you're like, I kind of need him more than I hate him.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he yelled that at me once. He was like, "You don't seem appreciative that I'm just like, I'm helping you be normal. I'm helping you be normal." Then he used the R slur. He was like, "We all thought that you were going to be hurt, forever and that you would never get better. And then here I am, like, helping you. And this is how you thank me. You're messaging her." And I always thought, because just this is kind of how I'm wired, I just thought that if I said, "Well, that's not true, you're being ridiculous," if I just like point this out to him, then he'll realize how ridiculous he's being. And
If only.
yeah, and
That would be
it
lovely.
did not go that way.
Yeah.
And so he would always, do that. And then like one time he grabbed my face like after the first waxing, but I guess they didn't do a good job getting all of it or something. And he like looked at it and was just like, "Disgusting. We're gonna have to go back another time." Yeah. And I was just like, what a thing to say. What a thing to say. Why doesn't he just realize that I am not the person for him?
What's he doing this for? Like, why is
Exactly.
he, like, what's he getting out of this, And I guess, like, for manipulative, like, narcissists, potentially they're getting out, like, a feeling of control. But you did say just before that there was something that your friend said that he didn't want you to know. And I feel like it's a good time to revisit that because I'm so curious. Like, did you find out? Like,
Yeah, so I thought that maybe he just has a hero complex and just wants to be like the hero. And then I was like, why is this happening? He obviously doesn't like me. And that was about 5 or 6 months from my accident. And my friend had come back from South America from her study abroad. And I asked her if I could call her because I still didn't know what had happened that night or what had happened at all, really. And she was like, "Yeah, of course." So we talked, and the night of my accident, we had had a couple beers. We were talking about him because he had moved his stuff into my room. She was all, "But you told him that he needed to buy a plane ticket. Like, you were making him buy a plane ticket. You told him, buy a plane ticket and show it to me because I want you gone."
the opposite of what he said. He
Yes.
said that you guys were dating, so you actually wanted him to leave. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're starting to find out the truth. Okay,
Yes. And then she was like, "Yeah." And then we decided to climb the tree. You'd only had a couple of beers. You weren't drunk or anything. And then we were at the top of the tree, like 80 feet up. And then you just turned to me and you're like, "I got to get down right now." And you started climbing down really fast. And then a couple of minutes later, I just heard two thuds and then a boom. So she was like, after that had happened, we called an ambulance. You're getting taken to the hospital. That was the piece that I was like, but then how did he find out that, the guy? Because he showed up before my parents ever did. So I was like, how did he find out? And the friend who had come back from South America, the one who had been with me, I asked her and she was like, "I called him. He was at that time the closest person to you that I knew, even though what had happened between he and I made it so I'd never wanted to contact him again." And at that time, I was like, "Oh, yeah." And then as soon as she said that, I remembered all of it. He had sexually assaulted her like a year before, and he had gone on a study abroad. And then when he came back from it, UC Santa Cruz has a trailer park on campus, and it's a tight-knit community that lives there. And I guess he was trying to get a place there, and someone had responded, "Sorry, we don't want any sexual assaulters in our community." So he flipped out. He knew what happened because she had lived in that community and had told people there what had happened. She had also told me what happened, but I didn't remember any of that. This whole time, like, I knew something was off, but it wasn't until she said that I was like, I remember all of this. And like the months leading up to my accident, she and he had been having arguments and stuff, and I was like mediating. And the last conversation, it had ended where she said verbatim to him, "I could get you in a lot of trouble. You did something very wrong, very bad, but I'm not going to. I just want you to take this and understand that you shouldn't operate this way." And then he, instead of like hearing that, internalizing it, just kept like browbeating me. And that was the reason why he was staying with me, and was because he was just like, you don't think she's going to change her mind and press charges against me, right? You don't think she's going to do anything about it, right? And I was just like, that makes so much sense now. especially why he got so angry about that. Maybe there's something he doesn't want you to remember, because there was something that he didn't want me to remember. And I confronted him and said, like, hey, I remember this. This happened. I know this happened. I remember this happened. Is that why you're here? Is that why you have stuck around? Because you're still scared about that whole situation? Is that why you're here? And his response was, that's crazy. I can't believe you would turn yourself into the victim in this situation. That is not why I'm here. I'm trying to make sure that you're getting better. And yeah, if she hears that I'm sticking by you and being a good person, then she'll realize that I didn't do anything wrong and that I'm not a bad person. And I was like, you just told on yourself. Like, you literally are saying right now what you're doing. And this is terrible. And then he was like, but I'm pulling it together. It's, it's fine. But I do think that I should leave. I was like, it's probably a good idea. And that was around the time too, when I told my mom that he was going to leave. She's drinking her champagne and she's like, yeah, I mean, he did also try to pull the plug on you. And I was like, what? And she was like, when you were in a coma, he came to me and he said, if things aren't looking good, we should not be afraid to pull the plug on her. And it was like 2 days into the coma. And she's like, people are in comas for months. And I was like, that's just too much.
So let me get this straight. He was pretending to be your boyfriend and then supporting you through this experience of recovery, which, to be clear, he wasn't. But anyway, so he was pretending he was, in order to vindicate himself of sexual assault.
Yeah. And then during it all, he was like, but it might be a good idea if she dies, because then that I'll look super sympathetic. I don't know. But it was just, yeah, the whole thing was insane. And then finally he left. And
like, for good? Like, see you later.
Yeah, he left San Diego. He decided we should stay in contact and we should keep seeing each other. Like, we're not done. This is okay. You're just misunderstanding what is happening. I told this story to a group of writer friends, and they said he's like a little boy playing dress up. It's like, okay, well, I tried this and it didn't work to make me feel better. Because then he was like, I'm going to go work on a boat. So he dumped me.
But, like, question quickly, like, when you figured this out, like, and you confronted him, and no judgment, but I'm just curious, like, why wasn't your immediate response like, this guy is bad news? Like, why did you feel like staying in contact with him was a good idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I think it goes back to, like, my messed up psychology. I can't even blame this one on the brain damage. I've always been in relationships that are unhealthy, and I haven't had the healthiest relationships mirrored to me. So in my mind, even after all of that was explained, I was like, he's acknowledging it. And I wanted to believe him. And then in that moment, when he broke up with me, and I was telling my friend again about it, she was like, this is the best thing that could have happened. Let it go. Let it go. Stop. And I did. And it was the best thing that I could have done, is just like, let it go. But then, of course, that wasn't the end, because he started then calling me. A few months would go by, and it was always the same thing, that he was like, you don't think she's going to try to press charges? You don't think she's changed her mind? And I would always be like, who is this? Like, no, dude, stop calling me. Then he emailed me, and he was just talking about how depressed he was and how he couldn't move on with his life because he was always in fear that he was going to have charges pressed against him. And at this time, my senses had come to me. So I responded. I was like, this isn't innocent behavior. Like, a guy who didn't do anything wrong wouldn't be so afraid of this. And especially, it literally lined up. It was right when Kavanaugh it got confirmed to the Supreme Court too. And I was like, look at what is happening on the political stage. My guy, you are not in danger. Like, come on.
When he left, because, right, so the whole way through, he's adamant that, like, he's helping you. Like, he's some fucking savior. Like, I am the one that's, like, picking you up, and you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me, whatever. When he left, did you find the recovery process easier?
100%. After he left, my progress skyrocketed because he had been
Yeah.
stressing me out just for so long. Like, at the time that I talked to my friend on the phone, I could barely string sentences together. And the first time he called me, I had missed the call, and then I called him back, and he was like, "Hey, I didn't think you would call me back." And I was like, "I want to know why you feel that you can call me. You made my recovery process so much more difficult. The first few months are when you make the most progress with the neuroplasticity, rebuilding everything. I feel like that you stole from me months where I could have made so many more advances and my recovery could have gone a lot smoother." And as I'm ranting to him about this, he interrupts me and he goes, "Wow, your speech sounds really good." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's literally been 1 month that I can talk like a normal person now that you've
Yeah.
left." And he like disregarded everything I said and was all, "Well, I took mushrooms last week and had a bad trip and knew I had to call you to make sure that everything was going to be okay." And I was like, "This is insane." It was just,
Oh my God.
just insane.
Wow, this story is so wild that it like doesn't even feel true just because there's so many layers to it. Like, I mean, the falling out of a tree and not remembering everyone is one thing, you know, very 51st dates, very the vow, especially waking up with like a boyfriend you don't remember. But then there's also this added element of his actual reason for being there and his need to kind of show the world that he's a good guy. But also his need to be in control of you, and like his idea of being a good guy is to like change you, undermine you. It's just like, it's just so many things in one story. In so many ways, I imagine has affected your life. But how has it affected the way that you've gone about like relationships? Have you struggled with that, or like where are you at with that?
Um,
Big question, sorry.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Like, yeah, I have struggled. Well, I did want to touch really fast. So the friend that he sexually assaulted and all of that, I wouldn't be talking about that if I hadn't talked to her first and made sure. So I've actually written about this story for outlets, and I've always changed her identity. And I talked with her on the phone too, and we met in person and debriefed about it. And she said that she thought it would be helpful for people to know the full extent of everything. So,
I
like,
appreciate you asking her. Like, yeah, it's super important, especially when we're talking about such delicate things, that the person involved is okay with it. And I'm so glad she is.
yeah. So after that situation, I did end up getting involved with a person that I had known for like 10 years. I thought he was a good friend of mine because I was like, I don't think I can be in like a committed relationship. Like, I need all of these things and I need to go slow and all of this. And he was like, yeah. And I thought he was being accommodating about it. And it was like, no, really, he was like doing stuff on the side with other people and just, which we
Right.
hadn't like okayed or anything first. And then he ended up, he also dumped me through text messages and then blocked me. And then I found out that he had moved a much, much younger girl into his apartment. And I was like, oh boy.
This is not a podcast episode that's going to bode very well for men.
I was like, you have to laugh at this point because it's that old saying, if things like this keep happening, maybe it's you. And I was like, yeah, there's is a pattern. I keep getting involved with guys who keep being like heinously bad, villainously bad. That I'm like, okay, I obviously have to go to therapy. So I did. I went to therapy for a long time. And I didn't date. I didn't get involved with anyone. I was like, I don't think I should be doing that anyway. I would definitely say I am on the asexual spectrum for sure. So since then, I do write comedy and I do comedic bits sometimes on like TikTok and stuff. I bring that up because I posted a TikTok video making fun of the guy who left me for the much younger woman. Because I would run bits by him and like tell him jokes and stuff. One bit that I used to do is I used to say that my vagina was a lounge singer named Marlene and would do covers, but only of Tom Waits and Leonard Cohen. And I really did. I was like, I think that would be a funny bit. I'm going to try to do it. So I made my vagina lip sync to a Tom Waits song, and it went semi-viral, like viral for me, you know. And a lot of people were tagged in it. A lot of people were commenting on it. Someone tagged another comedian on there. I responded to that comment and I was like, "Oh, is he a Tom Waits fan?" And he started following me and we started following each other. And then he followed me on Instagram and we were messaging on Instagram, just like keeping it real casual. And then I proceeded to spy on him for 6 months because I
Nice.
have a vetting process now. And so after 6 months,
Probably wise.
yeah,
Probably
right?
wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then we ran in a lot of the same circles. Like we knew a lot of the same people in the comedy world. And then finally, after 6 months, we were flirting a little bit more and then exchanged numbers. So that was last December. So since then, we take it very slow, but I've been seeing him and he's been a gentleman and very nice. I told him right off the bat, I was like, I am a terrible alcoholic. I have very severe brain damage. And a guy pretended to be my boyfriend while I was in a coma. And he was like, that's a lot. And I was like, yes, it is a lot.
I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I really think that this whole story is such a story for following your instinct, because even though you were working with, you know, family trauma and your own struggles with alcohol and you had all of these things going on wired in your brain, making it hard for you to listen to your instinct. I want to make it clear that you still had an instinct, that he was not like, you were like a bit off him from the start. So like, I think it's really interesting, you know, that I feel like this whole story is just about, you can always trust your instinct. Your instinct is like almost like bigger than you know?
Definitely, definitely. And I really feel like after so long, repeatedly, so many people telling me that I'm wrong, the way I think is wrong, the way I behave is wrong, who I am is wrong, being told that over and over again, then when I did have these instincts and these feelings, they have to be wrong. I must be so damaged that I just can't realize that they're wrong. And I think that had I just, you know, trusted myself, then a lot of this would have been circumvented a bit.
I think it's just part of the human experience. Like, we try to kind of over intellectualize, and if we did this, if we did that. But I really believe that the only way that we really learn in a way that kind of sticks to us is to actually experience something bad. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I can trust my instinct. But I do really want to know if you're feeling like this relationship is more where you want to be. Like,
It's definitely the healthiest relationship I've been in. I actually touch him. Like it's actually
Yay.
affectionate, you know. It wasn't ever that I felt like I chose a relationship or I actually wanted to be in one. With this one, I actually feel like it was like an agreement, like we both were on the same page. And he's just genuinely a nice guy, which is nice. And like we're really respectful to each other. Like I even told him, because I have a lot of trauma and I have a lot of issues that come up. And I told him, I was like, hey, I think I need to have like a standing weekly phone call where we just talk about things, because I don't feel like I can be a burden and I don't feel like I can just bring things up when I have these feelings. I need to know that something is on the calendar and that time is set aside for me and that I'm allowed to say what I want and I won't feel like an inconvenience for doing it during that time. And I was really nervous to ask him that because I was like, that's asking a lot. This is such a big deal and stuff. And he was just like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. We should have done that weeks ago. And I was like, this is normal. This is healthy.
yeah, that's amazing. It sounds really good, and I'm really happy for you because you've really been through the ringer. Like, to learn a lesson, you've gone through so much. So I'm happy for you. That's great.
And I feel like also, because there's always this narrative that if you go through some sort of relationship trauma, then you have to have like a good relationship to show that you've overcome it or something like that. But I think that healing can occur outside of a relationship. And I also think that just because you're in a healthy relationship, that doesn't mean the end of that. I have way, way far to go to be like a healthy partner. And that's why I really appreciate this guy being patient with me. But I also want to drive home that I think that healing can happen outside of relationships, that whatever avenue you go through to pursue it, it's just going to take time and a lot of co-pays for therapy.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, Brooke. This has been like such an interesting conversation. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Sex That Changed My Life. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to hear more from Brooke, she's an incredible writer and comic. You can see just how funny she is over on TikTok, and you can jump on her website for her written pieces. We'll pop both links in the show notes. You can follow us at Changed My Life Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And if you enjoyed today's episode, hit follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss out on the next one. We'll see you next week. The Sex That Changed My Life is produced by Rachel Tuffrey and Julian Morgans. This episode was edited by Ali Dickey. Our cover art design is by Rich Akers, photography by Ali Woods, and our theme music was produced by Jimmy Saunders. And this whole thing has been a Superreal production.
Superreal.